Joining me now for Left versus Right is Baroness Claire Fox. Thanks, Claire, for coming on the show for the very first time. Our residential left in the corner, Stephen Pound, is here for the umpteenth time. Now, earlier this week, I sat on the Home Affairs Select Committee where we got to grill Home Office officials and have a look at this clip. Hi, guys. Just one question from me. Put foreign offenders aside and Albanians aside, just forget about those numbers. How many people travelling on small boats that's been refused asylum have been sent to a third country or back to their own country over the past 3 years?
I don't think we have. I
think we'll write to the committee with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
That's staggering.
Do we have any figures about anything?
Yes.
In the last 6 months, just how many in the last 6 months? People who are coming here who are being refused asylum, because I'm sure there's a few. How many was sent back last month?
Incoming.
We'll write to you with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
I'm sorry, Chair, but I find it absolutely staggering. What do you think, Claire?
Not often I am gobsmacked and speechless, but when I saw it the first time, I couldn't get over the arrogance, the incompetence, and I think it's exactly what people dread in the country, that they feel that their concerns are just like, what are you asking that question for? And you know, it was apparently, why did they not think they were going to be asked that question? There is an inability to come to terms with the fact that we need to know what's happening on the borders. Yeah. It's bad enough thinking they're out of control, but not even being able to give you even an approximate answer on any of the questions as you made it simpler. Yeah. It was like when you started saying 6 months, this month, last week. Yeah. And it was like, and they were kind of going, we'll get back to you. It's just not good enough.
Stephen, but honestly, read it and weep. I mean, I have to say, I thought the most brutal interrogation on the Home Affairs Select Committee was the time when you actually lamped the Albanian ambassador and left him limping, back to his official residence. And I'm not blowing smoke here. I mean, it was a very, very good performance. But look, what was depressing about that is we constantly fool ourselves in this country that we have the best, most impartial, well-oiled machine of the civil service. That was embarrassing. Paper shuffling. Does anybody know the answer? As you say, Claire, the one question you knew that Lee was going to ask was that question, and they were
no disrespect to you, Lee.
Oh, go on, disrespect.
It wasn't as though you were asking really clever, penetrating questions. It was like stating the bleeding obvious, and you were asking an obvious question, which anyone could have, and they were like, "What?"
But isn't it typical of them?
Don't interrogate us.
Well, I tell you what it was, Steve. I actually wanted the answers to these questions. I thought, let me just ask them some really simple questions, because before that clip, they were dodging every single question that went to them, and I thought, it's my turn to ask a question. Let's have a couple of simple questions and then get the ball rolling. But the ball never got rolling, Claire.
I think the fact that they didn't know off the top of their heads a very important point like that means that they don't care. And when you were asking the question, genuinely, I thought, what is the answer? Because very often when you're having a discussion with people, particularly people who say, I don't know what you're fussing about the boats or whatever, I'll say, well, do we know exactly what's happening? And you're trying to get the detail of it. You don't want to just do the headlines. So you were asking a question that lots of us want to know. Right? Not because we're interested. No, as it happens, it's like misinformation at the beginning. I'm on the left, so I'm like one of your liberal lefties who's actually quite liberal on immigration, but I don't want it to be that to mean that we don't control our borders and that we don't know what's going on. And it drives me mad when they kind of say, it's not like that, they're all fleeing war. I just wanted to know.
Can I just say, this absolutely typifies the problem we have immigration in this country. We're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. We're constantly looking at the outcomes about, what we do with people when they're over here, what hotels we put. We should be looking right at the beginning. We should know who comes in, and we should be processing people on day one. Then we would know. And I hate to say this, but we've got to have ID cards if we're going to actually know who's in this country.
Well, we're talking about outcomes, Steve, and we saw the outcome of the Supreme Court a few weeks back, where they decided that there were problems with Rwanda. Obviously, that's being tweaked. The treaty is being drafted as we speak. And we've spoke about a plan B, and maybe part of the plan B, Claire, is leaving the ECHR.
I think that It has to be considered. I suppose my main thing, and this was when the Supreme Court spoke as well, every attempt at solving or resolving this problem seems to meet with barriers presented by people who have not been elected by anyone. Now, I appreciate the irony that I've not been elected, but I'm not standing in the way of policy, am I? And the reality in the House of Lords is, in every discussion on immigration, people say, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that because of this, that and the other. And if you want to know why there's public frustration around immigration, it's being told that regardless of anything they demand, anything they vote for, you can't do it. I happen to think the Rwanda scheme's daft. I don't think it works very well, and it's a bit stupid. But that's not the point. Elected politicians, daft or otherwise, put forward a scheme, it goes through the Commons, the elected part, it gets to the House of Lords, they try and stop it, then they eventually have to give way. The next minute the EHRC's there. Courts in Strasbourg, what? And then the Supreme Court say. So if you're a voting person in this country, it's going to make you disillusioned with democracy. You're going to go, what's the bloody point?
Claire, would you leave the ECHR?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yeah. No, of course I wouldn't. Don't forget that it was domestic legislation that actually caused this decision. Look, in America, they elect the judges. So if you want to be a judge in Cactusville, back at Beyondsville, you get elected. Do we really want to have our judges elected? Because they will be elected on party political grounds. Do we really want to have Labour, Tory, Liberal, whatever, judges? I don't think so. Look,
I don't think that's the only option.
I'm sorry, it's a lot easier to find a scapegoat than it is to find a solution. And at the moment, we seem to be looking for a scapegoat, and the ECHR
So what is the solution, Steve?
The solution is we process people in this country at the day of arrival. Look, there's a lot of the immigrants to this country. We want to get them. We want to get them working. We want to get them paying taxes. If anyone thinks that we can send people back to Iran, where some mullah's going to be sharpening his scimitar on a sandstone, it's the minute you step off the plane, we're going to send them back to Kabul or Kandahar. Of course we're not.
But
Stephen's talking as if the vast majority of the people crossing the channel are genuine asylum seekers.
No, not the vast majority. No, they're
I've
not.
been to France, Stephen. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been on the camps.
I've been to Albania.
They are economic migrants.
They're fit young men in many cases.
From African countries that are coming here.
And by the way, you can understand why fit young men would want to come here and improve their lives. No one's saying that. That's why I was talking about
that's about their interest, but I talk about the national interest. We should talk about the nation's interest, not their interest.
Yes, but it's certainly not in the nation's interest to lie to the British public about these things and to basically make them feel guilty and say if you send them back, they're all going to die.
So, Claire, if you was speaking to these two hapless officials today round this table about this week's performance at the Home Affairs Select Committee, and you was their line manager, what would you be saying?
You've got the tin check.
I'd say not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
Right. Stop working from home. Get on top of your brief. I mean, there's about to be strike action now because they've been asked to go in for 3 days a week.
On strike.
No, I know, but I'm saying they're saying the idea that you call a strike because somebody's asked you to go into work 3 days a week. You do think, for God's sake. But in all seriousness, I'd say you are insulting the British public. You're there as public servants. A public service requires that you are able to answer elected officials when they ask you the most basic question. But just on the broader question of the European Court, a lot of people say, oh, well, we won't have human rights, we won't have freedoms if we leave. And it's like, do you think anyone's incapable of drawing up decent law? I mean, you might think maybe not, but the idea should be that we can have domestic laws made by us, which is improving on what we've got there. And even Lord Sumption, who actually in the past have argued with about this, he used to say we should never leave the European Court of Human Rights. He just come out and said, do you know what, having looked at their recent...
ECHR is not the European Court.
Sorry, that's why I get it wrong.
But why can't we have stronger and better laws in this country to protect our human rights?
We can.
Well, there you
absolutely
go,
no reason why we should. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that we have to actually abandon Churchill's vision of a European standard.
It's a different world. But also the other thing that you've got to bear in mind is I think that it becomes an excuse. And by the way, I think by the Conservative Party as much as anything else, because in the old days, it used to be the case that no matter what went wrong in this country, they'd say it's the EU's fault. Now, I'm a Brexiteer, but it used to annoy me that British politicians would rush over to Brussels and say, we've got an idea for a law, we don't want those grubby little voters having their say on it, so can you bring it in and then we'll blame you if people don't like it. Now the danger is that it does become a scapegoat in that way, which is an excuse for the governments to say, what can we do? It's their fault. So I don't want that to be.
If we can go back to you as the line manager, these two hapless twerps who were
We agree on this.
eviscerated by that. I mean, should they get the tin tack? What's going to happen to them? Or guess what? I reckon they'll be promoted and shuffled sideways. you keep thinking, do you remember Margaret Thatcher and Dennis Thatcher's thing when Dennis said, gosh, how many people work in the civil service? And she said, about half of them.
Yeah. Claire, final word on this.
If we do not resolve the situation of people feeling that nothing is being done about immigration, something they're passionate about, we've seen scenes in Dublin.
In Dublin, I was going to mention
right?
Dublin.
Dublin is exactly the kind of thing where the seething eruption of frustration will break out.
There comes a tipping point.
And we've seen things like Geert Wilders in Holland, right? So
Okay.
be careful what you wish for.